Okay, let's now continue with the rest of the exercises in folder 5 and the next small part of grammar. We're first of all going to have a look at exercise 3.2, which you prepared and corrected last time. What you needed to do there was look at the sentences here on the left-hand side. Then in the second column, you had to determine whether the inform was used in these sentences or not. Is the action still going on now? And how long did the action go on for? Okay, so that was basically what you needed to focus on. Let's have a look. The first sentence, the idea had been brewing for 10 years before it started to take shape. Inform, yes. Action is no longer going on. It's an action that went on for 10 years. And I don't know if you noticed, but in this sentence, we have two past actions, started and had been brewing. And the action that happened first is had been brewing. Why do we say had been brewing and not had brewed, which is basically the past perfect tense which we talked about in the previous session? That is because we focus on the duration of the activity. For 10 years, it's quite a long time for an activity to go on. When you focus on the duration of the activity, you need to use the continuous form. And in this case, the past perfect continuous, because you're talking about an action in the past that happened before another past action. Let's have a look at the second example. Daguerre had been working for over 10 years before he produced the first practical photographic process. Inform, action is no longer going on for over 10 years. Once again, we have two actions in the past. He produced and he had been working. He had been working is what happens first. He first works on the invention and then he produces something. Had been working is in the past perfect, but the past perfect continuous tense, not simple tense, but the continuous tense, because you focus on the duration of the activity, which is over 10 years. Let's look at the third one. William Talbot, who had been working on photography for a few years, developed a new process using paper instead of copper plates. The same thing goes on here. You focus on the duration of the activity, and it is an action which goes on before another action. So what happens first is him working on the invention and then him developing something. Okay, so had been working is the thing that goes on first, happens in the past, the action that goes on before the other action, and we focus on the duration, so had been working and not had worked. George Eastman had been in the camera business for several years before he founded Kodak. Here you can clearly see the difference with sentences A and B. He had been in the camera business for several years before he founded Kodak. Action is no longer going on. It is an action that takes place before another past action. That is him founding Kodak. Found means stichten, oprichten. Is an action that goes on for several years, but because we have the verb to be here, you have to say had been. You cannot say something like had been being. That is not possible. So had been. So the next one, the different photography companies have been working on new digital cameras ever since. Action started in the past, continues up until the present. How long did the action go on for? That we do not know. It is not indicated in the sentence, but you can guess that's been for quite some time. And the same is true for the last sentence. The pace at which the world of photography has been developing is unprecedented. Action started in the past, continues up until the present. How long precisely is not indicated, but focus is on the duration. It's quite a long time, a long process which is being described. Now, if you find all of this a little bit confusing, let's focus on the blue grid on the next page, which will sort of tell us more, or which will give us more of an idea in more detail of when to use the two tenses that are used in this exercise. So let's have a look at that. Good. We're going to start by having a look at the present perfect continuous, and then we'll focus on the past perfect continuous. First, the present perfect continuous. Let's look at that example sentence. By the way, this is not new. Present perfect continuous is a tense that we have already studied in the past. It is simply revision, nothing new. Digital photography has been changing ever since. How do we form the present perfect continuous? Have or has been plus the ing form of the main verb. So here you have to add have plus has. Has is only for the third person verb. When do we use it? He has been working as a war photographer for years. First of all, this is a present perfect tense because it's an action that started in the past and lasts up until now. So there is a clear link with the present. It is not an action in the past that is completely over. The man started working as a war photographer a number of years ago, and he is still working as a war photographer right now. So action started in the past, link with the present, but we focus on the duration of the activity. 4 years. That is very, very important here. Because we focus on the duration of the action, we need to use the present perfect continuous and not the present perfect simple. The present perfect simple would be he has worked as a war photographer for years. It wouldn't be horribly wrong if you were to say that, but it is correct, or it is grammatically more correct if you say he has been working as a war photographer for years, because you focus on the duration of the action. Good. Let's see whether there's anything more relevant here. The action is still going on now. There is a clear result in the present. The action lasts up until now. What is very important is that you have a link with the present. Let's then look at the right-hand side, the past perfect simple and the past perfect continuous, which we have here now. Daguerre had been working, Daguerre is the man's name, had been working on his daguerreotype, it is called, for over 10 years. How do we form this tense? Had been plus ing form. Another example, he had been taking pictures of refugees for years when he won an award. Here you have two actions in the past. The first one is him taking the pictures of the refugees. The second one is him winning an award. What happens first is him taking the pictures. Okay? The action that happens then is him winning the award. Now, him taking the pictures. Okay, you know that is the action that happens first. So you know that you will have to use either the past perfect simple or the past perfect continuous. Why do we choose the past perfect continuous here? Because we also focus on the duration of that action. He had been taking pictures for years. You have a clear indication of the duration of the action, namely 4 years. Okay? And because that is the case, we need to use the past perfect continuous here and not the past perfect simple. You can see it here in the timeline as well. You have an action 1 and an action 2. Action 1 is the one that happens first, 2 is the one that happens then. For action 1, we need to use the past perfect tense, either simple or continuous, depending on whether we focus on the duration of the activity or not. We're going to have a look at exercise 3.3. I'm going to do that together because it's a rather difficult exercise. Okay, let's have a look at exercise 3.3. If you want to prepare it individually first, you have to pause the video right now and see if you can prepare the exercise in pencil first. But you can also just watch the video and correct it together with me, because it's a rather difficult exercise and it's easier maybe if you just watch the solution and then practice on your own later on. Okay, let's have a look. Sentence A. Pierre started studying photography in September. Now it is January. Pierre has been studying photography for 4 months. Okay. So in other words, first of all, the first thing that we need to determine is there a link with the present here? Yes or no? The answer is yes, because he is still studying photography right now. Second question we need to ask, is the focus on the duration of the activity or not? The answer is yes, because you have that clear indication for 4 months. That tells us that you need to focus on the duration. So he has been studying photography for 4 months. The next one. Apple started designing the new iPhone 6 months ago. Now they have a prototype ready. They have been working on the iPhone prototype for 6 months. It's an action that starts in the past. There is a link with the present or a result in the present. In this sentence, it's both. That already tells us that we need to use the present perfect tense. And because you have that indication for 6 months, you need to use the present perfect continuous. Have been working. Mark taught English for 10 years. After 10 years, he opened his own photography studio. Here we have 2 past actions in our sentence. We need to first of all determine which is the one that happened first. The one that happens first is Mark teaching English, in this case for 10 years. And the action which happens then is him opening a photography studio. For the action that happens first, we need to use a past perfect tense, either simple or continuous. Because we have that indication for 10 years, you know that you need to use the continuous form. Mark had been teaching English for 10 years before he opened his own photography studio. And the last sentence, Kodak worked on the first commercial camera for 4 years. It was released in 1887. 2 actions in the past. The first one is Kodak working on the first commercial camera. Kodak had been working on the first commercial camera for 4 years before it was released in 1887. Okay, that is the action that happens second. Okay, I now have a selection of exercises for you to prepare on Schoodle. And some extra exercises online if you feel the need for more exercise. For the exercises on Schoodle, you will need to use your class login and the login which you have on your workbook as well, which you probably have already used in the past. Okay. Why is it important to use the class login as well? That way I can check that you prepared exercises. Okay. The class login can be found in on Smart School in the course news. Okay, so good luck.